Welcome to a new edition of Conversations with our elected officials. I'm Enrique Raulunsky for ABC Latino Media Network, and today we are broadcasting from ABC Latino Media studios in the city of Poughkeepsie at 356 Main Street. Together with us, we have Assemblymember Didi Barret from New York State. Didi, welcome.
Thank you.
To our program. Happy to have you again with us.
Very happy to be here.
Okay, you were here with us for the opening of this new space.
Beautiful
so
space.
So happy to have you back. And for our audience that is tuning in right now, let me tell you that Didi Barrett is a Democratic member of the New York State Assembly representing Assembly District 106, which includes parts of Dutchess and Columbia counties. Barrett earned her BA in Speech Communication from University of California at Los Angeles and her MA in Folk Art Studies from New York University. And she is a trustee emeritus of the American Folk Arts Museum. So,
not your usual
not your usual
qualifications
cup of tea for a politician, which is refreshing. Okay, so how the jump into politics?
Well, I guess I don't really think of myself as a politician. I think of myself as a public servant. And my longtime commitment to community development and arts and to all sorts of things that we work on in the Assembly just kind of dovetails. I would never have known this prepared me for this work, but it definitely did.
Very interesting. And I have read that you were elected to the Assembly on March 2012 after a special election.
That's right.
To succeed Marcus Molinaro.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so how was that process? I mean, somebody must have approached you and say, Didi, I think that you should run, or...
That's exactly what happened. More often women need to be asked to run for office. Men wake up in the morning and say, you know, I should be president or whatever. But women generally need to be asked, and I was. The Dutchess County Democratic Chair, Elisa Sumner, called me up and said, you know, what do you think about this? And I realized that the things that I care about, that the opportunity to talk about them and to run a race is something that that I couldn't turn down. It was wasn't something that I had in my game plan for my career, but it turned out once I started to run and be a candidate and go around and meet people and talk to people and understand more and more about this region and this district, the more I loved it. And I really love what I'm doing. I feel very blessed to have this beautiful district. It's a really, really stunningly beautiful district, but with so many interesting people and so many interesting things. So that is how it started, and here I am 6 years later. It's almost exactly 6 years since I was sworn in. We won on election night, but it was close enough that they wanted to count the absentee ballots, and ultimately I was sworn in on April 17th, 2012.
Wow. So we are almost
close
to the anniversary. Okay, excellent. So you represent Dutchess and Columbia counties, and an area that is primarily rural in its composition. Do you live in this area?
I do, yes. I live in Columbia County, in the middle of a lot of farmland, and I really, really love that part of this district. The only urban part I have is Hudson, the city of Hudson, which is a very cool little city. I have the town of Poughkeepsie, not the city of Poughkeepsie. And that community is a little bit more suburban, so I do have a mix of rural, a little urban, and suburban in my district. I also have some incredible institutions. The FDR Library and the Culinary Institute of America, the CIA. I have Vassar and Marist Colleges and Dutchess Community College and Columbia Green in Columbia County. So I have those great institutions of higher learning. I have Olana, which is the birthplace of American art, arguably, and certainly a real gem along the Hudson. I have several state historic sites and parks, Mills Mansion, Claremont. I think it's a spectacularly beautiful district with a lot of interesting things going on.
So a lot of historic places.
Definitely.
And are you still in the Assembly Commission for National Parks and Historic Places?
I'm on the committee on tourism, and that includes parks and historic sites. But the task force that I was chairing for a couple of years, I'm no longer chairing. I'm now the chair of Libraries and Educational Technology Committee, which has been a really wonderful experience as well. But my passion will always be ensuring that the things that we love about this region, so the historic and cultural history, but also the agriculture and the natural resources, making sure that those things become the economic and real drivers for our future, environmentally and economically, that we have a sustainable future. So that's, those are my priorities, and
very important
and
issues.
that this area is perfect for that kind of commitment.
That's what makes this area special. And by the way, did you get to know Congressman Maurice Hinchey?
I did know him, and we didn't really overlap too much, but I definitely had the opportunity to be at events with him and some panels, and he was a very special guy.
He was certainly a champion to preserve the beauty of the Hudson Valley and the environment, and to make it
and created the Hudson Valley Historic Corridor. That was a major gift that he gave the region.
Yeah, sure. And what's the composition of your district?
In terms of
the population.
Well, most of the assembly districts are 130,000 people, so mine is, in the ballpark of that.
And it's mostly rural, or
the city of Hudson has
farms.
So the city of Hudson has about 7,000 people. It's a city, but a tiny city.
Mm-hmm.
And then the town of Poughkeepsie, which is the largest municipality, has a little over 40,000 people. So that's the biggest population, and then the rest of it is mostly agricultural farms, small villages. I have the village of Millerton, which is a very engaged and active village. I have a lot of little hamlets, like the hamlet of Wassaic, where the Wassaic project is, and some of the other Armenia has a hamlet. Hyde Park has is kind of a in between a rural and a suburban kind of mean. I mean, it's really a very interesting mix of of different kinds of communities, but all of them are really very community minded. They're people are engaged on their school boards and on their volunteer firefighters and on their library boards. There's a real sense of community in all of the towns I represent. It's really about 20 municipalities.
Mm-hmm. And your district is also home to a large and growing Hispanic population.
Absolutely. It's, I would say, the fastest growing segment of our population.
How have you seen, what are the changes that you have seen over the last 6 years in the composition of the community, also the contributions of the Hispanic population?
Well, I think there's much more presence in all aspects of the I think of our life in general. I mean, initially when I first started, there was a small Hispanic business community. I was aware of youth work that you all were doing, mostly focused in the city of Poughkeepsie. Not as much. I think the agricultural aspect of part of the community was a little bit less well known, a little bit maybe more underground. And I think in general, everything is really just kind of grown and blossomed. I see in the eastern part of my district a real growing presence of the Latino community. I see people who have been elected to office in the county legislature, and more presence in in our school districts. I mean, I think the numbers that you were referring to have manifested themselves in just a much more of an engagement with the Latino community here in my district particularly, but I think probably across the whole Hudson Valley.
Yeah, and you participated in our fourth Hudson Valley Latino Forum that was held at Dutchess Community College during March. And one of the themes that was so relevant during the lunch hour when the whole forum was open to public conversation was the need to have a driver's license for all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
green light, yes.
Green light,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that. Where do you stand in regards to green light?
Well, I do support the legislation, and I understand it was introduced this week by my colleague Marcos Crespo, and so there's a bill number now for it. I think that this is an issue that's obviously has been around for a while, but that it's overdue in being addressed. And I was particularly intrigued in the last year in monitoring this situation to see the Farm Bureau, which in general has been is probably one of our more conservative institutions, but that they too are dealing with this issue and recognizing the importance of making sure that driver's licenses are available. I mean, people will drive, people will be out there, and it's much safer to make sure that they have licenses, that they have an identification, that they can, especially now if they're dealing with issues in their children's schools, that they have the identification to be able to go in. And I mean, I know it's a mixed bag because of the the federal government's position on all of these immigration issues, but it feels to me like the right direction to go in.
And so what's the process now? For those viewers that are watching us now that they don't understand how the assembly process works.
How a bill becomes a law.
How a bill becomes a law.
Okay.
Because everybody wants to know, okay, so when will I be able to get a license, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so what's the process now that the bill was introduced?
So the bill was introduced in the Assembly. At the moment, I'm not sure if there's a Senate version of it. So the way a bill becomes a law is that it has to pass, the bill has to pass both the Assembly and the Senate. Mm-hmm. So there has to be what's called a same as bill, the exact same legislation has to pass both houses. Doesn't have to pass at the same time, but does have to pass in the same session. And then it goes to the governor, and the governor has to sign it. So it has to be those three parties that come together on it. And so far, I think we're just at that first step where the Assembly has a bill. It's been introduced. In order to get onto the floor to be voted on, it probably has to go through a committee process. I'm not sure, because I'm not familiar with this bill, what committees that would be at this point. But that's what it is, and hopefully, it will happen in this year. It's a controversial enough issue that maybe it won't, but I think it will be a great opportunity for people to monitor it and learn how this process works, because there's always a place for advocacy and for people speaking out. In the whole point of what we do in Albany and the public nature of what we do is that we want to hear from our communities, and governor needs to hear and the Senate needs to hear. So I really encourage people to get as informed as possible about this and become advocates for what they want to see happen.
So with your invitation right now, how does somebody from the community that is watching the program and says, oh, I want to get involved, I want to test the waters, I think that what I'm hearing sounds the right thing to do and I want to get involved into politics and learn more, what are the steps for somebody that comes out of nowhere?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that people, that people can become involved. And you're talking not necessarily about running at this moment, but about becoming involved in this issue.
Becoming involved in the issues, but also somebody that might think, I would like to know whether I'm ready to run for office or not. Right.
Well, I think there are, certainly the Democratic Party in Dutchess County and in Columbia County are very open and welcoming to people just to come to reach out and say, I want to learn what you guys stand for, what you're fighting for, what your issues are. And so those, that would be, at least that's my party, so that would be, but I'm sure that the Republican Party has a similar, welcoming position. I feel like there probably are other grassroots organizations. I know certainly on this green light issue, that the New York Immigration Coalition's been working on that. My friend Evelyn Garzetta in the town of Northeast she's been working with a coalition. I mean, there are people that you can reach out to specifically to learn about, issues that people may be interested in. I think there's an opportunity just to come to Albany. If people want to reach out to my office, we have one office here in the town of Poughkeepsie, one in the city of Hudson, and or call our Albany office, and just talk about coming in or bringing together a group of people to come in and talk about what they're interested in pursuing. We're always open to talking with constituents about that.
What's the number they can call?
The phone number is 518-455-5177.
You mentioned Assemblymember Marcos Crespo, and I know that recently you both requested $1 million in fiscal year 2018-2019 for the library system across the state for census programming. And I know that the census that is coming up in 2020 is something that you have at heart. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, thank you for asking that, because this is really a critical issue for our region, for our state, and especially for the Latino community, because there's been a serious undercount in New York State in 10 years ago, and I think we have every evidence that could happen again in the 2020 census. Part of that is because the federal government at this point is putting much fewer resources into census count than they have in the past. Nobody's doing door-to-door, it's all being done online, and there's real outcomes to being undercounted. We get much less money, we may lose a member of Congress. I mean, these are issues that, that are all based on the number of people, and the census doesn't say anything about citizenship. It's a count of people living in our state, and Marcos is the chair of the task force that deals with the census, and I'm the chair of the Committee on Libraries and Educational Technology, and I feel like libraries for a lot of the state are places where people feel safe, whether it's a rural district or whether it's a district that has a significant immigrant population. Our libraries have played a role in a lot of different ways to help make people feel like this is a place they can turn to when they need information, when they need to learn how to prepare for a job interview, when they need to get background information about something going on in their community, and that they've been there as healthcare navigators in New York City. They've done the NYC initiative. So libraries really have already a historic role in working with our communities, and I feel like this may be a really important place for them to step up and shine. And we hoped to get this money in the budget this last budget that we just voted on. And while we didn't get it yet, we haven't given up yet, but we will continue to push for libraries to be involved. Other states have put a lot of money into census preparation. California is committed $50 million, and New York State hasn't yet committed any amount of money. They did put a commission that Marcos had introduced into the budget, but they didn't put any money behind it. And that's another issue that people could really advocate for and push, because this, as I said, this will disproportionately impact the Latino community. They say that Latino children are significantly undercounted, and these are the undercounts that they're aware of. So I know that in all of our communities there are parts of their families that are not being counted at all, and that the forces that be are not even aware that they're not being counted. So I think it's really important for all of us in our own towns and villages, churches, libraries, wherever we feel safe, to make sure that we get everybody counted.
It is very important to understand that the Constitution doesn't ask for the citizenship of those participating in the census. They just want to record everybody that lives in the United States.
Right, exactly.
So for millions of people that live here, and that depend on the services that the states provide, it is very important for them to be counted. So the 2020 census is something that is of primary importance to everybody.
Absolutely.
What precautions are being taken in this scenario where we're living nowadays, where the federal government is going after people that have been living here in the States for so many years, but they don't have their papers yet?
It's a really...
There will be an apprehension for somebody to really participate fully of the census. So what steps can be taken or are being taken?
Well, that's partly why I believe one piece of that is the libraries, that if people feel there's a place that's safe, that they can, it's all being done online, so you need access to a computer, and if we can create kiosks or some kind of a space in our libraries where that can happen, I think that we need to make sure that there are trusted partners, in whether it's not-for-profit groups or as churches or other trusted parts of our individual communities, that people can work together to make sure that those, that each family and each household is really counted. And that I do think that the more local we go with this, the better we are, because if we're waiting for a statewide or a countywide or some other larger entity to make sure that everyone's engaged, I don't think we have the level of trust that we would in, whether it's teachers of, of English as a second language, whatever each community's place where there is confidence and there is trust. I think that's where it has to happen, at that very grassroots level.
Why did we abandon the door-to-door recording? Because the first thought that comes to my mind, for example, if I can go to a kiosk, a computer, and type in the information, and there is nothing else that is required from me, what prevents me from going to 10 different locations, 10 different computers, 10 different IP addresses, and enter any type of information? There is no real control, right?
I think there is. I don't actually know enough about that aspect of it at this point to share, but I'd love to come back and talk to you about that when I do know a little bit more.
Good.
But I think that's not, those precautions will definitely be built in. I think there will be probably social security numbers or some other way of
But if you ask for social security, then you don't count everybody.
Well, and that's absolutely true. No, I think that this is how, we need to learn what the specific process is, and that's what in fact my office is just now, as we're speaking, kind of putting together some action items to answer those very questions.
Excellent.
And figure out how we can happen.
We'll have you back
I will look forward
before
to
the 2020 census to definitely talk about this again. Excellent. And Didi Barrett, it's not only an assembly member in New York State, but she's also a community-minded individual that participates with several organizations in her district. I see here that you created the Duchess Girls Collaborative, and you are also part of the Northeast Duchess Fund of the Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation. Briefly, how's that community engagement parallel to being a politician?
Well, I mean, my background actually is much more diverse than that, in addition, as you said, to my folk art background, but also, in not-for-profits, I started several organizations for women and girls, and particularly girls. I feel like it's really important that girls grow up understanding that this is what an elected official looks like, and that they too can step up and run for office. So a lot of what I do is to be, as much as I can, a role model for girls growing up today. And my work at the Northeast Duchess Fund of the Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation, which we introduce you to as well, is really recognizing that northeastern part of Dutchess County often gets neglected So much of what happens in our region is along this Route 9 corridor here, the city of Poughkeepsie and Hyde Park, Rhinebeck going up and down, and a lot of our organizations and services are based here. It's obviously where more of the population is, but the very beautiful and very community-minded region in the northeast part of the county often gets ignored, and so my work there has really been to make sure that all of the communities there have the resources, both social services as well as educational, as well as attention on protections on the environmental issues, support for the agriculture, that are all such key parts of those communities.
Very good, and time flies, so we have just 1 or 2 minutes for a question that we ask of all our guests. Who is Didi Barrett?
I think what you see is what you get. I mean, I'm a mother. I am a community activist. I really feel like a very fortunate person to be working in an incredible region like this and doing the kind of work I do. I feel as long as I keep meeting new people, learning new things, and making a difference every day, that I want to keep doing this.
Very good. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And this has been Conversations with our elected officials. Today, Assemblymember Didi Barret with us from the studios of ABC Latino Media Network in Poughkeepsie. I'm Enrique Rob Lunsky. Till the next time.